Hey guys, it's Kaylor. Welcome to the YouTube channel. This is Design Build Launch episode 4. In today's video, we're going to export our Adobe XD assets, set up our project, and build a style guide all in Webflow. Let's go ahead and get started. So in the last episode, we left off with our finished design. We have everything to our liking. We only have the desktop version designed, but that's okay because we will be making this fully responsive inside of Webflow. The first thing we need to do is start exporting our assets, such as our images, and get those set up in Webflow. So here in my project folder, I'm going to right click and create a new folder and call this assets. The first thing we're going to want to do is make sure that we have these two circles here in a grouping, and I'm going to hit Command E to export those. I'm going to select my assets folder that we just created, and I'm going to name this Circle 1 and hit export. The next thing we want is the second circle here. Select that and hit Command E, and we'll call this Circle 2. At the bottom of our design, we have these other two circles, so I'm going to make sure they're in a grouping. So I'm going to select both of them holding Shift and hit Command G to group. Command E will export, name that Circle 3. And so we have all of our circle images exported. The next thing we'll need is two icons. So I'm going to select both of these icons and hit Command E and go ahead and export those. And finally, we need these background images. So I'm going to select all of the images, making sure they're not in a group with the text, and hit Command E. So once we've exported that, we have all of our images ready for Webflow. Here inside the assets folder, I'm going to rename some of these. So now here in the assets folder, we have circles 1 through 3, our two icons, and our card backgrounds all numbered in order that I want them in. So now we can head over to Webflow. So at webflow.com, we need to sign in or create an account. If you guys don't have a Webflow account already, I have a sign up link in the description. That link is an affiliate link. So if you choose to upgrade your account to a paid version within the first 90 days, that can help support me and this channel. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign into my Webflow account, and then we'll get started creating our project. So once you've signed in or created an account, here is your dashboard, and we want to simply select New Project. It's going to give us a few templates and some starter projects here, but what we're going to do is just go over here to the blank one and hit Select. It's going to ask you to name this, so I'm just going to call this Design Build Launch. So this is the Webflow Designer. If you're new or unfamiliar with Webflow, I'll give a quick overview. Here on the left in this toolbar, we have the main menu up top, which is going to allow us to switch between the dashboard, the project settings, and the editor. We're currently in the designer here. Next below that is the Add Element or Symbols button. Following that up is the navigator. This is primarily what we'll be working with. Here we can select elements such as the body. The pages are next, followed by the CMS, e-commerce, and then the assets, and finally the settings. Over here on the right, you'll notice when we have an element such as the body selected, we have all of these styles here we can adjust in the styles menu, as well as these other 3 menus that we will be getting into later on in the series. Going back over here to the top left, you can quickly change between your pages here. There's also a toggle preview. If you toggle this on, you can preview the website without having to go to the staging domain. In the center, we have the devices, so we can see what the design looks like on various devices and make our responsive adjustments here. We have the undo and redo buttons, followed by the save icon. You can export to code with this icon, share your project here, and for the publish, we have 2 options. We can select a custom domain, which we'll go over later, or you can use the default, which is the staging domain name. So it's just a domain name they give you so you can preview your website. Down here at the bottom, we have a little breadcrumbs menu. And over here in the bottom left, we're not going to be using any of these tools. They just allow you to toggle things on, such as hide element edges, etc. So I know that was a very brief overview of the UI, but I'm confident as we go through this, you will pick it up if you've never used Webflow before. And of course, as we're going through this, I'll try to be as detailed as possible in explaining why I'm adjusting certain styles and doing certain things. So here in Webflow, now that we have our new project created, the first thing I want to do is I want to go over here and select the project settings. We'll work more in here later when we get ready to launch, but the first thing we need to do is go to fonts. Here in the fonts list, we chose Roboto in our project, so I'm going to go ahead and select that from the Google Fonts list. So I've selected Roboto, and we used regular in our project, along with a medium, a semi-bold, and then a black. So I'm choosing 500, 700, and 900, so we have some various weights to select here in our project. And then I'm going to click Add Font. So now that we have our Google font, let's go back over to our designer. And we need to select our body here in the navigator. And I'm going to click inside of the selector and then choose this body all pages. So this is going to adjust the body class for every single page of our website. So this is going to basically set the defaults. So what we want to do is go down to the font and change that from Arial to Roboto. By default, I want the default font size to be 18 and then 18 times 1.5 for 150% line height. Sets that to 27 pixels on the height value. Here in our project, I'm going to right click and copy on our gray color that we're using on all of our body text. And back in Webflow here for the color, I'm going to paste that into the hex value. And then I'm also going to select the plus icon. And this is going to allow us to have a global swatch. And I'm going to change this to gray for the name. And we'll select create. So now we've set our font family for our website to Roboto. The last thing I want to do is, since our website is in dark theme, is set the color. So back in Adobe XD, on our main black color, I'm going to copy that. And for our background here, I'm going to paste in that hex code. I'm going to add that to our global swatches, and I'm going to call this dark black and hit create. And also, while we're here in the swatches, they give us a black by default. I'm going to select that and hit the trash can icon to delete that swatch. And for the white, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that and remove that. And then we can set this back to our dark black color. Just getting those swatches out of the way for later on. So I'm just going to click off of that tag. So now we have nothing selected because that is all we're going to set for the body. The next thing I want to do is select the page up here in the top, or you can go to the icon, and we want to create a new page. We're going to call this styles. And since this isn't going to be a website that anyone's going to be visiting, we don't need to worry with the SEO. So we're just going to hit create. So now you can see that we're on the styles page, and we're going to build a style guide here in Webflow to help speed up the website building process. The first thing I want to do is click the plus, and I want to add a div block. And here I'm going to give this a class called styles container. And I'm just going to go over here to the padding, hold shift and alt, and drag out a padding of about 30 pixels or so, just so we have a little bit of padding around all the elements we're going to put in here. I'm going to add another div block, and I'm going to give this one a class of styles space. So what we've done is we have a div block around this entire section, and then we're going to have space around all of our individual elements. So inside of this style space, I'm going to add a heading. And by default, Webflow allows us to choose one of these heading sizes. I'm going to go with H1, just close that. And I'm going to give this a tag of heading H1. So that is our class. And the default values here, we're just going to reset these to 0 for the margin on the top and the bottom. And for our sizing, here in Adobe XD, we're using 80. But if you take a look at the size of our document, it's 1920 wide, and our screen is actually going to be capped at 1100 pixels later. So we're actually going to need to scale all of these down. I probably should have created a grid in this that was 1100 wide, but because of that, I have to scale this down now. That's okay. It's very simple. Since we have 80, we're just going to bump that down a little bit. So in doing so, I'm going to actually set this to something like 60 pixels. And for the height of all of our headings, it's going to be 130%. So 60 times 1.3. That gives us 78 for that size. We're only going to have one heading on the page, and it's going to be set to white. And I already know the color code on that, so I'm going to go ahead and add that in. It's FFE. And then once we have that set, we'll hit the plus, and we'll just call that white and hit create. So now we have an H1 class already set up. So when we go to make that on our home page, we can just copy and paste this over. So I'm going to select the div block containing that and hit Command C, Command V to duplicate it. And I'm going to select the heading itself, click that little settings cog, and bump that down to an H2. And then over here, we can remove this class since we don't want it affecting this one up here. And we'll give this one its own unique class called heading H2. We'll remove the padding on the top and bottom once again by setting those to 0. And the size of 32 is going to work fine. And again, we need 130%. So 32 times 1.3 for our height gives us 41.6. We'll continue doing that again, Command C, Command V. I'm going to change these settings, cog to H3. Remove this class and heading dash H3. For H3, 24 pixels looks good. So we'll set the height to 130% line height. And again, we'll make sure we remove the margin on the top and the bottom. And before we move on, I'm actually going to change the text in these to H1 in front of this one, H2, and H3, just so we can visibly see that. Command C, Command V on that space class again. And this time we're going to create our logo. And our logo is going to be a variation of the H3. So we're going to create this as a combo class by adding another class called logo. And now that we have that combo added, we will be adjusting that class. So we keep all the existing styles from H3, but now we're going to overwrite some of the things. And the first thing we're going to do is change it to white. And a quick tip, if you select any of these elements, it will tell you what class is affecting it. So the blue one is the current class we are affecting, which is logo, and the rest of these values are set by the H3. So that's all we need to do for the heading. We'll just Command C, Command V once again on that space class. And this time I'm going to remove that, and then we're going to add a paragraph. So I'm just going to drag that in. And the paragraph has a margin on the bottom, so we're just going to remove that with 0. And since we set the body default, it's inheriting all that, so we are good to go here. We just need to give this a class of paragraph, and I'm going to call this normal. Copy that, and this time I'm going to remove this class, give it a new one, call this one paragraph small. Remove that margin on the bottom. And then for the size, we'll scale that down to 16. And then we'll have to set the height to 150. Since we're doing 150 for paragraphs, and for the heading, we're doing 130. And so that's it for our paragraph small. So back here in Adobe XD, we have our main content as paragraph normal. And then all the way down here at the bottom, we have our paragraph small for this card, since it's a little bit smaller in size to the normal paragraph text. So another thing we need to add here is an H4. So I'm just gonna grab the logo, Command C, Command V on that one. And I'm gonna grab that heading and just rename this to H4 heading. And then we'll bump that down to an H4. And I'm going to remove our combo class and our heading class and give it a new one. Heading H4, size 18 with a 24 height will work fine. And we need to remove the margin on the top and the bottom. And by default, we want this one set to white. This is going to be the heading we're using on that small card for this small paragraph text. So one thing I've just noticed is our style space class that is applied around every one of these elements has no padding. I forgot to add that. So I'm gonna hold Shift and Alt and just add in some padding here. We'll just give it about 15 to 20, just to give these elements a little bit of breathing room in between them. So looking back at our design, we have all of our headings in now. We have our H1, H2, this is our H3. Then down here at the bottom, we have our H4. We have our normal paragraph text, our small paragraph text, and now we need our main link and our secondary link. To add those, I'll select the style space and copy that again here at the bottom and delete the paragraph inside of it. Going to add a text link this time. And I'm going to give this a name of link main. In XD, I'm going to grab the purple color hex code and copy and paste that here for the text color. Once we've done that, we can add a new global swatch. I'm just going to call it purple and hit create so we can use that throughout the rest of our design. All of our links are a bit smaller than our text, so we're going to bump that down to 16 pixels. And just in case, I will adjust the line height to 150%, just in case we ever go to a second line. We have that. We want to leave the underline decoration, and then I'm going to change the text in this link to main link. And with that main link selected, we're actually going to go ahead and add the hover state. So If you hit this little down arrow, you can select the different states. Currently we're in the normal none state, but we're going to go to the hover and we're going to change this to white for now. So now when we hover over this, even here when we're editing, you can see it changes to white. I'm going to select that style space around that, Command C, Command V, and now we'll do our secondary link. So I'm just going to change that to say secondary link. And we'll remove the link class and give it a new class of link secondary. Make sure it is 16 pixels in size. Set the height to 24. Back in Adobe XD, I'm going to grab the green color code and we'll paste that in for the color. Add that to our global swatches as green. And then once again, we're going to set the hover state of this to white. So now both of those links have hover states. And we actually have a third link in our design. It is our navigation link. So I'm going to copy this one more time, edit the text to say nav link. And we'll remove the class and give it a new one called link nav. Adjusting the size and height again. This time it's going to be set to our gray color and we are going to remove the decoration by clicking the X. For the hover state, we'll also set this one to white. So now that we have that, the next thing we need to do is we need to create this card element. And so we're actually going to do that in our style guide, as well as this smaller card down here in the call to action. But before we create these here, we need to import all of our images. So I'm just going to select the assets and hit upload. So here is all of our assets that we exported earlier in the video. So I'm just going to click and drag all of them and hit choose. It's going to import all of our assets over here. And now we have everything we need to move on. So I'm going to select the bottommost style space and copy a duplicate of that and delete the link inside of that. Going to hit the plus, and we could do this with a div block, but I want this to be a link so that the whole card is clickable. So we're going to choose link block. If you accidentally choose div block, you can right click on the div block and hit convert to link block, which is a huge time saver. So with that selected, I'm going to add an image. So I'm just going to click that, choose image, and I'm just going to go with the purple card 1. And I'm also going to add a heading, and I believe this heading is an H3. So we'll go and add the heading H3 class. So with that heading class now added, you'll notice it's still blue and has an underline compared to our normal heading. So what we actually have to do is select the link block itself, and we'll give this a class of card large. And we're going to set the text color to gray to overwrite that default blue and overwrite the underline there. So now our heading looks like our normal heading H3. Going to add a combo class of project heading. Since this section is going to have a white heading, we're going to go ahead and overwrite that to white. And we did that in a combo class so that it doesn't affect our other H3s. So I'm going to select our link block. And under display, I'm going to set this to flex, which is the second icon here. And we're going to make sure that we set this to align center and justify that center as well. Down here in positioning, we're going to set a position of relative, select our heading, and we'll set that position to absolute. Since this is set to absolute, it is looking to that relative card large. So that's what we want. And we're not going to worry about the card size because we're going to be putting this in a grid. So for now, this is perfect. We have our heading here in the center and we have our card background. I'm going to select the space element around that and copy this once more. Go down here to the bottom and we're going to delete that entire block. Now we'll finally add another link block. And we have card large up here. So we're going to call this one card small. Back in Adobe XD, we need to grab this color right here, this black. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm actually going to select the style space, and I'm going to make a combo class on this one so it's unique. I'm just going to call that small card color. It really doesn't matter. All I'm doing this for is to paste in that color code we just grabbed. And since that's new, we'll go ahead and call that medium black and add that to our global styles for later usage. And we just applied a background color to this so that when I select my card small and add our default dark black to it, we can actually see it here. So inside of this card small, we need a few things. First, we're going to grab an image, and then I'm going to select the consulting user profile icon. We're also going to need a heading, so I'll grab that, and that's going to be our H4. And finally, we will need a paragraph, so we'll go ahead and add that in there. Again, since this is a brand new link block class, it is overriding our text. So with that card small selected, we're going to go to the color, set it to gray, and remove the text decoration. I'm going to select the heading, give this a class of heading H4, and select the paragraph. And we're going to apply the paragraph small class to that. So those auto adjust to those settings. I'm going to select the card itself, and we're going to apply a bit of padding. So I'm going to hold Shift and Alt and drag out 20 padding all the way around to match our design. And we also had 35 to 40 on the bottom. So I'm actually going to bump that up to 45 pixels. So we have a decent amount of spacing on the bottom there. And for now, we're going to set a width of 250 pixels. Should give us a good size. In XD, I'm just going to copy a bit of this text and paste that in here, just so we get a real example for this. And to space out this card, I'm going to select that H4, and I'm going to give this a combo class of H4 footer space. And we're going to apply 65 pixel margin on the top and 16 pixel margin on the bottom, giving us the card that we have here in our design. So now that we have our card large and card small, let's go ahead and add a hover to these. So I'm going to select card large, hit the drop arrow, grab that hover. Down here at the bottom, I'm going to lower the opacity on this to about 80%. And if I click off that when I hover over this entire section, you'll see that it gets a little bit darker. And then for card small, we will set the hover to change the background to green and the text to white. So if we click off that, when we hover over it, you'll see that we get a nice hover effect. And with that, we have completed our style guide to start this website. So to recap what we did here in episode 4, here on the home page, we adjusted the overall body tag for every single page, setting our font, which we did in our project settings. We also imported all of our images in here into the assets, and we blocked out all of our headings, paragraph text, links, and our 2 cards that we're going to be needing for our project. So now we have a really good starting point to start building this website. So in the next video, we're going to continue on and actually start building our website here on the homepage. That will be episode 5. I hope to see you guys there. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that video. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And as always, have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.